for the resignation on a
Okay, we're on.
surgical.
Okay. Okay, we'll call this to order. We've got anybody back? We're gonna call that sneak in after, we'll just leave that. Okay. All right. Deacon Robert, can we get you to lead us in prayer?
Absolutely. So we'll begin in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. The Lord be with you.
And with your spirit.
A reading from the Holy Gospel according to Matthew.
Glory to you, Lord.
Jesus said to his disciples, "You have heard that it was said, 'You shall love your neighbor and hate your enemy.' But I say to you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you, that you may be children of your heavenly Father. For he makes his sun rise on the bad and the good, and causes rain to fall on the just and the unjust. For if you love those who love you, what recompense will you have? Do not the tax collectors do the same? And if you greet your brothers only, what is unusual about that? Do not the pagans do the same? So be perfect, just as your heavenly Father is perfect." The Gospel of the Lord.
Praise to you, Lord Jesus Christ.
Opening prayer. Lord, you cared enough about us to come to this world and reveal your plan of salvation. You cared about us enough to make us, through baptism, a temple where you dwell. You cared enough about us to pour the gift of the Holy Spirit into our hearts, especially through the sacrament of confirmation. As we come before you today, we ask you for the grace to increase our faith in your love for us, to increase our hope in your hopes for us, to increase our trust and confidence in your wise and all-powerful providence as it guides us towards fulfillment and fruitfulness for which we yearn.
What God sees. When God looks at sinners, even stubborn sinners, he doesn't see unredeemable devils. Rather, he sees his beloved children who have gone astray. He never condones or ignores the sin, but sees the deeper identity of the sinner who was created in the image and has the potential to become a saint by being open to and cooperating with God's grace. God never gives up on us, on any of us. God never stops loving us. He never turns his back on us. That is what Jesus is getting at by likening God's love to the sun and the rain, gifts necessary for life, gifts that God never holds back from anyone, even from seemingly irreformable sinners. When Jesus exhorts us to be perfect, just as your heavenly Father is perfect, he isn't requiring us to somehow become immaculate. Rather, he is encouraging us to believe in this love God has for everyone, and to echo it and imitate it in our own lives. Loving our enemy doesn't mean approving of their sins. It means believing that God created them with good purpose in mind, and that God's redeeming grace is meant for them as well as for us.
Making excuses. One of the most concrete ways we can love others as God loves us is by making excuses for them. We do this for ourselves all the time. If I happen to be late to an appointment, I naturally forgive myself because I know that my tardiness is due to factors outside my control, or at least due to factors that are reasonable and acceptable. On the other hand, when someone else is late
to an appointment with me, I have a very different reaction. I get angry, self-righteous, judgmental, impatient. I start throwing the other person under the bus and thinking the worst about them. Why the double standard? Why do I easily make excuses for myself, but so rarely make excuses for others? This is part of our heritage of original sin. Our minds are darkened and our hearts are twisted. Jesus is pointing out in this passage. Jesus is pointing out that in this passage. He wants us to recognize that everyone around us is, in God's eyes, our brother and sister. We are meant to connect with others and give them the benefit of the doubt. That's how we create an environment in which we can live peacefully and prosperly. And if Jesus, sorry, I'm moving my screen here. And if Jesus is commanding us to adopt this attitude, this point of view, it must really be possible for us to do so. Indeed, with his help and guidance, we can do many things that remain out of touch when we just try harder and harder with our own strength. As Paul put it, I can do all things through him who strengthens me.
God's first book of Revelation. So many times in the Sermon on the Mount, Jesus uses phenomena from the natural world to illustrate his lessons. In this case, he points out how the sunshine and the rain reflect God's attitude toward us, his goodness and his love. If even the sun and the rain can teach us about God and reveal him to us, then everything in the natural world simply must be able to do the same. What is more mundane, more everyday normal, undramatic than sunshine and rain? St. John Paul II used to say that the Bible was God's second book of revelation. The natural world was his first one. How attentive am I to God's fingerprints in creation? How sensitive am I to the beauties and the harmony built into this natural world that God has given to be our home and our arena of spiritual growth? Postmodern culture often talks about the importance of preserving the environment, but very rarely talks about the spiritual meaning of the world as God created it. As we transition into summer, what can I do to better receive the instruction and inspiration that God wants to give me through his magnificent creation?
Conversing with Christ. Lord, you know us better than we know ourselves. You know that so often our hearts are like the porcupine, bristling at others and isolating ourselves from them. We have so little patience with people's flaws and failings, even with their idiosyncrasies. We are so unlike you, who make the sun to shine and the rain to fall on the just and the unjust alike. But we can see and taste the interior freedom that would come from keeping our hearts open to others, even to those who disrespect us or don't like us. We want to learn to be perfect as you are perfect. We want to spread your grace wherever we go. We want to embody in our lives the goodness that continually flows from your heart. Please teach us and guide us, Lord, and make our hearts more like yours. Together. My
Lord Jesus, may our feet journey together, may our hands gather in unity, may our hearts beat in unison, may our souls be in harmony, may our thoughts be as one, may our ears listen to the silence together, may our glances profoundly penetrate each other, may our lips pray together to gain mercy from the eternal Father. Amen.
Okay. We are going to move to the line note, please.
Before we begin, the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education
would like to acknowledge that we are gathering on the traditional land of the Blackfoot people, who have welcomed here for centuries the Cree, the Métis, other First Nations and non-Indigenous people. The land is now recognized as the traditional territory of Treaty 7 to the north, west, and south, and Treaty 4 to the east. The Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education also wishes to thank First Nations people, past and present, for welcoming us here.
And now we have a very special card, the Face of Christ Award.
So we'd like to welcome Mary and her husband John with us today, and also special welcome to Mel Dede, who nominated Mary. So Mel, I just would invite you to say a few words about Mary.
Thank you, Heather. It is an honor and a privilege to be here today to speak on behalf of Mary's nomination. I started working with Mary when I was principal of St. Thomas School over 25 years ago, when she came to work with a special needs student. And it was there that I first saw Mary show the true face of Christ with this little boy who was kindergarten or grade. He was in kindergarten that year, and she worked with him again, until I left. And not only did she show the face of Christ to this little boy, but to his classmates, to his teachers, to his parents, to everyone, and he loved her. And I could just sort of see that bond that was there. And I knew that we had a very, very special person working in our district. Over the years, I left St. Thomas, and Mary went other directions as well. And when I started subbing again, I again came across Mary, and I have subbed a lot at St. Michael's School over the past few years. And I have had the great opportunity to work with Mary. And truly, she shows the face of Christ to staff, to students, and to students that sometimes are a little more difficult or challenging. Mary is able to draw those kids. She knows how to communicate with them, and she works with them. And sometimes all she has to do is just give them a look, and they know, hey, you know what? She means business, and they show such great respect for her. And so it was when I saw in my email there was an opportunity to nominate someone, and I thought, okay, I'm a sub, but I would like to nominate Mary. I spoke to Shannon, I spoke to Laura, who Mary is with most of the day, and they thought it was a great idea. And so, ladies and gentlemen, you have a most worthy and wonderful candidate in Mary Cull to be your Face of Christ winner this year. I even got to spend the whole day with Mary today.
Track and field.
Track and field.
Mary, can you just come forward? I would like to say too that I've known Mary for a long, long time. I can't even remember. I think the first time I met you, Michaela was in your terrible twos or whatever.
Yeah.
It wasn't terrible twos.
Johnny too.
Yeah, they were kind of terrible twos.
Yeah.
But I worked with Mary quite a bit, and she's been my friend for a long time, and I can say that the look is there. My granddaughter's seen it. And it works with everybody, and she truly is the face of Christ. I've seen her work at church with the children's liturgy program, in the schools, with staff, New Year's Eve parties. I know I'm going to pull my face of Christ, but it was a lot of fun. And that's what Mary is. She's a lot of fun, and that's what Christ was. Christ brought fun, and that's what Mary is. So congratulations.
there.
Come on.
Yeah. Big half hour.
Are we over far enough?
Beautiful. Thank
Great,
you.
very nice.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You're so- You're very welcome. Don't get it, you have to. I'm going to sign secretary.
You don't have to stay, but you can. I said you don't have to stay, but you
No,
can.
I have some other commitments.
Right now.
Well handled, no.
But thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Very nice to do that now.
Wonderful to see you all.
Thank you so much.
Good job.
It's really convenient that these guests always have someplace else to go.
Oh, yeah. Well, you did too.
It
never go
cost
that
$8
one,
million.
It costs a lot of money.
The funny part, Dick, is that you made the motion, so.
I made the motion.
All right, let's get back to our agenda here. Approval of the minutes. Can I get somebody to, May 9th, 2023, can somebody move that?
I will do that.
All in favor? Thank you. And the special board meeting for May 24th, 2023. Somebody, David? And all in favor? And the public board meeting from May 29th, 2023. Someone move that? Bernie? And all in favor? Okay, approval of the agenda. Is there any errors or omissions or additions? If not, can somebody move that, please? Robert?
Chair, move the,
Oh, sorry.
you got a different mover?
Robert.
Oh, sorry.
Okay, all in favor? Board communications, it doesn't look like anything is there. Catholic education, 8.1, school parish relations committee. Stephen Robert?
So Heather was kind enough to put that in the report. I'd just like to draw your attention to a couple items, if you haven't read it or if you have. We had our meeting at St. Patrick's Parish. We're trying to alternate parishes. It wasn't greatly attended this time, but we had a really good discussion. Heather reviewed our 3-year faith plan, same one that she presented with the bishop. And then we had a brainstorming for new initiatives, which is, I thought some good ideas came out of that. And so you can read those in the report. And just to draw your attention to our faith work plan, that's another document that's attached. And that will help us or give you a good sense of what's going on in the division in regards to our faith plan in action. So I thank Heather for that. Excellent.
Yeah, it was a good report. Heather, did you have anything to say about the parish relations? No. Division Faith Day.
And that's just some details there and happy to answer any questions.
Who's the speaker? I read this.
Father Neil.
Oh, right.
Paddlingham. Very excited.
I looked at this and I went on and I looked at his video. Is he gonna cook for us?
Yeah.
That's good.
He beat Bobby Flay in some competition.
Yeah, he did.
If you're familiar with the cooking network.
He looked like a lot of fun. I think the kids, is he gonna have any interaction with the kids? No, because it's
Because they haven't started yet.
Oh, darn it. That's too bad because he would be a good one.
So who's gonna sample his food?
the lucky people who answer his questions.
Oh, I had the same question.
Oh, okay. Did you want to do that, guy?
David?
That is one fringe benefit of sending people to Congress every year, because it is fertile ground to find speakers, dynamic Catholic speakers, and also informative Catholic speakers.
We had a speaker come to Holy Family Parish from there, and he was amazing.
My wife and I met once and we talked about going back because it was such an amazing
Top
experience.
rate. And there's 3 other divisions for sure that are having Father Leo come, which is really nice. He's actually starting in Edmonton, coming to us, going back to Edmonton.
So are we able to share costs then? Or-
Yes.
Oh, good. Good. Yeah, it looks like a fun day. All right, board work plan, staffing updates. Chuck?
Okay, I thought I'd just give you guys just a quick update. Staff has been very busy.
They really weren't looking.
Sorry. No problem. So St. Michael's, we have, 3 retirees there and a maternity. So those are hired. St. Francis has a maternity and music teachers retired, so we've hired those. CUNY McCoy, we have 3 new teachers hired already. We're still looking for 1 more. St. Louis, we have a maternity there. Mother Teresa, we have maternity, and we transferred actually a teacher out of there, so we've hired for that. Plus, we've kept our interim phys ed specialist, so that Mr. Top's going to stick with us. JP2's had a fair bit of turnover. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 teachers, and there's a couple of maternities there. And we're expanding some programming there. We need another English teacher, and we needed another French teacher, which we found there. St. Mary's has a few temps because we have a leave of absence and we have a maternity. Notre Dame, we have a maternity there, and we're up in their staff just a tiny bit. So at St. Pat's, we have a 0.5 there also that we've hired. So we're 90%, 95% done staffing. We have just a little bit more work to do at McCoy. And as normal, we will look at hotspots come end of August, early September, and adjust as needed.
Questions? Go ahead.
Couple of questions. First one, just based on your report there, what, if any, details can you provide us or what's happening? What are the circumstances at JP2?
Well, his numbers are going up.
Okay.
And plus with Mr. Laird's, where we're doing Mr. Laird's program, there was some staffing that we had to add there. Plus we had maternity there also. So we were busy at JP2.
My next question has to do with fine arts at McCoy. The young lady who we hired a couple of years ago that I and others thought was a real superstar, unfortunately is leaving. I'd like to hear both not talking about naming the individuals. Anyway, what have we done to replace her, specifically the qualifications that we've gotten? I'm assuming we've hired someone who's a drama major and has a lot to,
Drama English in the University of Lethbridge.
So she's a drama major, or he or she?
I believe so, for sure, Maya. I think it's a major though. Is that so I took Nick, myself, and Mr. Bosch went to Lethbridge specifically looking for 2 positions. One was a music person and one was a drama English person. So we actually pulled University of Lethbridge students out of the crowd and said, where are you? And so when we found this one, she was exactly what we wanted. So we went out of our way to get her to Medicine Hat, including we started her May 1st.
Okay, excellent.
And she's working at St. Mary's and McCoy, doing some work to work with kids that are going to be moving across to McCoy. When we interviewed her and we talked to her, so her personality was exactly what we wanted for the position.
We all know that there's a large number, I don't want to say a large number, a significant number, a worrying number of young teachers leave the profession in the first 5 to 7 years. I know with the individual who was leaving, course load in English was fairly heavy. I don't know if the individual taught AP English but had some higher level ones. So I'm a little worried that we don't repeat that scenario this time with having an expectation to do the drama and the production and all that kind of stuff, which involves a tremendous amount of extracurricular time, plus put on demanding English.
Just a few little things there. One is AP English is going to another person. We have that all figured out. There will be some English there for sure. That's where she is. She's drama English. But we also looked at when we did our other hires. With your extracurricular, the drama piece was an important piece of that. Are you willing to help out? And yes, that. So we do have. You're exactly right. I think too much perhaps. She did a great job for us. Maybe she needed a bit more support. And some mentorship is going in there also.
And in that vein, I understand that the individual hired for band at McCoy is also doing music at St. Francis and also St. Michael's.
St. Louis.
St. Louis and St. Michael's? Okay.
No, St. Louis and St. Francis.
Okay. So I'm a little, sorry, I'm not criticizing the assignment. I'm just saying I'm a little worried, one, for a first-year teacher, two, the extracurricular expectations that come with those positions. One, band, concerts, supporting the musical if necessary, whatever. And then, of course, the extracurricular activities involved in the other schools. Not that the teachers have to have choir, but they often have choir. And so that's extracurricular. And then depending what happens in the schools, there's the Christmas concerts. So when I heard about that combination, I got a little worried. What I'm saying is, I hope there's support and understanding for that teacher who's a first year teacher and what all's involved and so on.
Right. So just a couple of things there. One is, the music program at McCoy is basically 0.25. It's about all this 0.125 choral, 0.125 band. That's that piece. Previously, the music teacher that's retired, she did 0.5 at St. Mike's and 0.5 at St. Louis. So we've kind of had that. And it helped us, I think it helps us with what you're asking is because McCoy and St. Francis literally are 100 meters away, right? So that helps us with that travel piece of it. And we did go through this with the new teacher saying, okay, listen, here's what we have. This is what we're looking for. And very excited about taking on everything. He's got a good background, very good musical background. He's a high-end musician. And does a lot of work with in Lethbridge, again, another University of Lethbridge grad, so we're pretty excited. But I agree that we did think about that, David, very carefully.
So I once again, I'm not criticizing the makeup. All I'm saying is like, we should do, and I'm assuming we do this is, and perhaps in that one position, an enhanced awareness. Like we need to support these young teachers. We want them to be successful and they want to remain with us and not be burned out after 2 years. Thank you.
Any other questions on staffing? Okay, locally developed courses. Mr. Helm?
So thanks to Chelsea for this again, but we have a number of courses that McCoy's kind of requested so that we can provide some flexibility in some of their programming. That's on Schedule B, which is the longest there. We did a number of these early in the year. What month was that, Chelsea?
So we did the original ask in May, and some of these courses all the courses that are listed now today, the other school divisions that renew them hadn't renewed these ones yet. So now they are up, they're available. So they were in the original ask for McCoy, but unfortunately weren't available to us yet. So now we just need to come back for a second time and request the remainder of what McCoy was looking for.
But they've already had them, right?
Yep, these are all, nothing is new. all the courses that they've asked are just ones that had expired and now we just need to renew.
Okay, so we'll need a motion. Oh,
Yeah,
sorry,
we need a
Chuck.
motion, so the motion is that the Board of Trustees for the Medicine Catholic Board of Education authorize Montezuma High School to offer the locally developed courses set out scheduled.
David Lee, and all in favor? Or any discussion, I guess? Guess we've got that. All in favor?
Related to locally developed courses and our recent discussion with Bishop McGrattan about developing new courses. You remember we talked about that at Holy Family. I checked and all the public high schools in Lethbridge offer a seminary course that gets credits that students can take.
Where's it from? Do you know?
It's for students who are members of the Mormon faith and they take seminary. But there was some question about whether or not it was an accredited course. It is an accredited course. And it's available in LCI, Winston Churchill, and Chinook. It's offered before school. So that answers the bishop's concern that the government would have issues about such a thing being offered.
All right, third quarter financial update. Greg, or are you just getting that up there?
I think we're just getting it up here. Thank you. So we have the third quarter update to the 2022-23 budget. So the comparison that we'll be talking about during the presentation will be from Q3 to Q2. So we'll be talking about the changes that have occurred over the last 3 months. This information is current as of May 31st, 2023. And at the end of the presentation, the motion that the trustees will be asked to vote on is, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees for the Medicine Catholic Board of Education approve the acceptance of the 22-23 third quarter financial update as presented. So on the screen, what I've done is provided a summary of the package that you have within your board package. The Q3 to Q2 numbers, and actually, we do have a handout to help guide you if you wish. Our revenue is sitting at $37.2 million as projected, and that compares to 37.0 from Q2. So that's an increase of just under $200,000. The expenditures have also increased. They're sitting at 37.2 compared to Q2 where they were at 36.9. So that's an increase of just over $300,000. So the surplus has reduced from $140,000 at Q2 to sitting at $25,000 at Q3. So if we go to page 2, what we'll do is drill down onto the revenue side, and we can see that the total revenue increase was $196,000. And there was a variety of places where we've had changes. As a result of the weighted moving average, we now know what our actuals are. So our base instruction funding decreased by $10,000. Our schools funding decreased by almost $20,000. We had anticipated most of that, but getting the actual numbers in March allowed us to adjust the projection to make it the exact amount that we'll have for the financial statement. We are receiving about $20,000 more on the mental health in schools grant. So that's been included as part of this projection. Our out of school CARE grant, and that was money very specifically from the Alberta government, was $27,000 higher than what we were expecting. So we've increased the funding to reflect that. Conversely, our instructional resource fees has decreased, and that's a function of lower fee collection as well as lower activity at the schools. So based on both their SPDM budget and the school generated fund budget, we've adjusted the Q3 numbers for the instructional resource fees. We are seeing a significantly higher other sales and services in the neighborhood of $117,000. And there's two drivers there, both within our preschool revenue as well as our out-of-school care. So at the start of the school year, schools were projecting very conservatively. Now that we're more than halfway through the year, we have a pretty good expectation on what that year-end number is going to be. And as a result of that, we're showing an increase of $117,000 on other sales and services. Our investment income, we're seeing higher returns from the investments. So we've increased the revenue projection on that line by $25,000. Gifts and donations, we're seeing $24,000 higher, and that's based on school generated funds. There's a lot more donations and activity occurring through that account. So the same with the fundraising account. We're seeing about $16,000 higher, and that's driven because of the higher fundraising activities that are occurring within schools. And then the amortization of capital assets supported, that's increasing by about $35,000. And that's because of the assets that have been purchased through the year that are supported assets. So as a result of that activity, we've increased the revenue side to help reflect what the supported amortization revenue will be for the year. On the expenditure side, there's a few changes there. Within the administration side, we're seeing an increase of $20,000, and there's three major drivers there. First is the salary expense of $14,000. We're seeing a higher salary costs right now, and that's from some payoffs or payouts for the transition of certain positions within the office. We're seeing a higher amortization expense, and that's with the transition of the photocopiers. And lastly, our dues and fees are about $4,000 higher than what we had projected, and that's from everything from ASBA fees, ACSTA fees to CAS fees. So as a result of that, we're seeing a higher expenditure. Our instructional pool is almost $11,000 higher, and there's two major drivers there. First is the criminal records check. Our teachers, as part of their requirements under the Teaching Profession Act, requires that a criminal records check be done on a regular basis, which we are responsible for paying. So we're seeing $5,000 higher than what we were anticipating, as well as the U-Lead conference. That was $5,000 that wasn't contemplated as part of the Q2 numbers. The instructional staff pool for certificated is about $68,000 higher. And that's mainly driven from the higher FTE based on this requirements to supplement teachers, as well as those teachers that Nick and Chuck have hired and were given contracts in April, May, and June. So as a result of that, we're seeing higher costs within that line item. Within the instructional staff pool uncertificated, we're about almost $11,000 higher, and that's a function of one of the secretarial positions being backfilled due to an injury or an illness with another. So that's that's resulted in a higher cost than what we had contemplated in Q2. The school-based budgets, that's about $40,000 higher. And the major driver there is the learning loss expenses. Now that those grants have come through and we're passing them off to schools, we're seeing higher expenses as you would expect. And then there's just other general spending within in schools. So that accounts for the $40,000. School generated funds is the next item. And we're seeing just higher spending from activities. And like we talked about within the revenue side, there's more activities occurring on the fundraising side, and you would expect, because we're fundraising, we're going to do something with that money. We're seeing higher activity. The other driver there is when those budgets were set, there was a lot of uncertainty still coming out of COVID, what schools are going to be doing. So everyone was projecting very cautiously. And now that we are where we're at, schools are starting to return to the old normal. So that's resulting in higher expenses. The nutrition program had a small reduction of $7,500, and that was based on the trend. And that money will be reserved for next year and be available as part of that budget. Student services or learning services, we're seeing $103,000 more than what was projected in Q2. And there's three major drivers there. First is the services. We're trending $40,000 higher than what was projected. The certificated staff are $33,000 higher than what was projected. And non-certificated activity, mainly within the casual pool, is at $20,000 higher than what was projected. Technology support is seeing a savings of about $51,000. And the major driver there is the cybersecurity project. We've completed the projects that we were working on within the current year. So that $51,000 will be available for the projects coming into next year. As part of the budget process, we've already factored that in, so that money will be freed up as part of the reserve. Within plant operations and maintenance, we're seeing about $18,000, and the major requirement there is the amortization costs. So with the buildings improvements as part of the IMR and the CMR, we have higher expenditures through the amortization expense, so we're seeing higher costs coming in that program. International education is up $43,000, and the major function there is with the higher salary costs. So there was staff transition throughout the year, and we have people into those roles now, and as a result of that, we have higher staffing costs of $43,000 for the current year. And the last item within the expenditure side is on the external services out of school program, where we're seeing expenses higher by $12,000. And just like we talked about within the revenue side, that's a function of higher activity, which is resulting in more staffing costs required. So what does that mean to our reserve or our net assets? The major issue is with the unrestricted reserve. So in Q2, we were expecting the year-end balance to be $828,000. That now reflects the $663,000. So that's a variance of $164,000. And there's two issues there. First is the adjustment to the surplus. We were expecting a higher surplus than what we are now. And the second component is with the purchase of the photocopiers, the board had authorized the use of $300,000 from the restricted reserve, with the residual to come from the unrestricted reserve. So as a result of that, we expect year end to have a unrestricted net asset of $663,000. Within the restricted reserves, we are seeing a small decline within school generated funds, and that's again based on the higher activity and utilization. The international ed reserve that's earmarked for religious ed, and the international ed that's earmarked for the SCSL project, that's $21,000 lower. And just like we talked about a few minutes ago, with higher staffing costs of about $42,000, you would expect to see that the reserve is going to decline by an equivalent amount. The future replacement of capital assets, we were forecasting that balance to be $203,000. It is now $0, and that's based on the board motion, which authorized the use of that reserve to purchase the photocopiers. And we had talked about that money being used plus a portion of the unrestricted reserve. And then the only other major change is within the capital reserve, where the funds that we had set aside for future replacement of assets, 51,000 is now at 41,000, and that's just a small decline of $9,000, and that's a function of that's a function of how the amount of money that we were going to put into that reserve. The actual expense is lower, so we would expect to see the Q3 number to be lower as well. So that's the 60,000 foot snapshot. Trustee Musto has a question.
Thanks, Greg. A couple of questions. One, going back to the expenditure side of this, where are the cost of subs in this? Is there a separate line for that, or where is that? Are we tracking on schedule or on what we anticipated for the cost of subs over the year, or are we spending more than what we anticipated?
It's a little more than we anticipated. So the sub costs are part of the instructional staff pool, certificated. So it forms part of the $16.5 million. I don't have the details rate in front of me.
I just wanted to know where that was.
But we're not massively over.
And my second question has to do with restricted reserves. This goes back quite a ways because we raised money for the McCoy modernization. There's about $200 and some thousand that we raised. That, as far as my understanding as of the last question, the time I asked this, the government hadn't asked for. In which reserve is that?
So that doesn't show up as part of the reserve. It's an actual liability built in. So liabilities would show up on the balance sheet itself. So that, if you remember, within the financial statement, we have a schedule that shows the I think it's $221,000 that is earmarked. So when the government comes calling to look for that money for the modernization of Monsignor McCoy, that money is available. It's already been accounted for, and then we can just write the check with no impact to the bottom line.
Looking into your crystal ball, what is the likelihood of the government coming to look for this money?
How long has it been there?
They're listening. I at some point in time, someone's going to do a reconciliation
Can we be cheeky enough and ask them if we can use this money for this capital project?
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
Then they might want it back. It's just interesting that we sweated over this, and that was part of our commitment. And now after the facility's built, that's, how many years ago now is that? And no one has asked for any money.
5 to 6 years.
Yeah, probably 6.
It's longer than that.
Is it?
That the modernized, that, you know, I
It's-
know I just, 6, yeah.
I can't remember exactly.
So I can't give a percentage based on what, but I think from a moral and ethical point of view, we want to keep that money there, so when the government finishes their reconciliation process, we can.
Well, absolutely, we have to do that, that's just prudent stewardship. But I think as each day passes, the likelihood of them coming looking for that money gets less and less. We've had change in government
Yes.
twice, I think, since that happened.
Yeah, this is the third minister.
So it's just something that is just stuck in my mind, that it's money that we would be able to use.
But it doesn't, so the very specific question is, it doesn't show up as part of net assets, it shows up as part of essentially the accounts payable.
But it's sitting there waiting for something to happen to it.
Yes. And when the time comes for us to make that payment, the funds have already been fully accounted for. So there's no bottom line impact, except for the difference between the 251 that we owe and the 221.
Is it an interest-bearing account?
Pardon me?
Is it even an interest-bearing account?
It's sitting in as part of our cash balance, which we put in to a bank on a high yield return, which is one of the reasons why we're seeing a higher interest, like the $25,000 higher than what we were forecasting. Is because of how we are managing those.
They're almost ill-gotten gains.
No.
We're getting gains on money we shouldn't even have.
It's all about the board.
Any other questions, David?
A comment, and specifically related to international education. I'd like to request that see that the board has set aside money for a retreat at some point next year. That in that retreat or at some point next year, we review or have an evaluation of the international education program, because it's been going now for quite a while, and we should do that kind of evaluation of the program. And you've heard me say this before. When I look and I see that the expenses for the program are over $1 million, and we had anticipated a profit originally of $66,000, and now we're looking at a profit of $66,000. Now we're looking at a profit of $23,000. And while I know there are a number of non-quantifiable benefits to having the international education program, I also know there's a lot of work being done, and it's impacted teachers both positively and negatively. And I know that when we first talked about this as a board in the last term, we had anticipated a greater return than what we're getting. And so I think it's wise that we have a discussion about this program and evaluate it and see what we should do. So I'd ask that be included on the agenda for some board retreat. I don't know what other trustees think about that.
No, I think that's a good idea. We should do that anyway, because there's never been an evaluation of that program. When I was in, Calgary, at the ASBA conference. Cindy was there. Cindy, I can't say her last name. And she said they have kind of a new program to do evaluations with, and they're looking for somebody to pilot with, and they would like it to be nice and Catholic. And she said, and we'll give you a good deal. So I'm just bringing that here.
Bon voyage.
And I want to make clear that we gave direction that we create this program. So I'm not criticizing the fact that we have it. I'm just saying that it's time for us to look at it now from the, what did you say, 16,000 miles? And see what it's, has it done what we thought it would do?
Just to make sure we're all on the same page, on page, that's interesting, on page 16 is the international ed budget. So based on just the program itself, they're looking at a surplus of $325,000. $325. And then from that, we take $160,000 and allocate those to the different schools and departments. So for example, Monsignor McCoy had 58 FTE and they received $2,000 per FTE.
Well, I'd still call that an expense.
Yeah, just how we have the expenditure and then we have allocations to the departments. So then that leaves a net contribution to the division of $164,000. Now, out of that, the board very graciously took $82,000 of that and provided that to learning services this past year.
But I think it's a good idea to look at a program that we've had for a while and just do an evaluation. We do that on all the programs.
So thanks for that.
Okay, so we need a motion here, right?
Yes,
Right?
please.
Would anybody like to make that motion? Be it Robert, Deacon Robert. Any discussion on it? Approve the acceptance of the third quarter financial update as presented. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, information items. Dr. Zucchi, strategic priorities update.
The strategic priorities update is our standing item and the update is attached. It's an interesting thing to note that when you go from month to month, you don't sometimes notice all the things that are being done, but when you take time to reflect on the whole year, you realize all the work that's been done. So the June update has been added to the document. Additionally, for next year, with our goals that have been set, we'll be able to not only provide this report, but also the progress specifically on the goals that were identified as part of this report. So it'll be a bit more, it'll be a report plus for next fall. But I'm prepared to answer any questions.
Does anybody have any questions or comments on this month? Okay, we'll move on to change in group RRSP provider. Mr. McPherson.
Thank you. So we have a group RRSP plan for the non-bargaining staff who are not eligible for participation in the local authorities pension plan. What we are doing is effective September 1st, 23. We are transitioning to our RBC from Canada Life. We have received feedback from staff. There was a general non-pleasure of the level of support they were receiving. On the administration side and administration of the plan, there was several concerns we had. So we looked at several different options. We looked at their references and met with the potential providers and have selected Royal Bank to be the administrator of the group RRSP plan. We are, well, we've already sent out communication to staff on what the transition looks like. There was an online presentation actually today at 4:30 that staff could sign up for. And then there's another presentation next week that staff can participate in. And then over the summer, they'll meet with our RBC and go through the process to transfer their funds from Canada Life to RBC.
Did they lose anything?
No,
No.
no, it's a should be a seamless transition.
Sometimes when you transfer RSPs and stuff, they lose stuff.
If any of the fees will be absorbed by our RBC.
Okay, any questions on that? Okay, we'll move on to communication reports. Tia.
The report's attached, and if there's any questions, I'm happy to.
You know, when I was in Edmonton at the Grace Summit, there was a communications person there from Christ the Redeemer. And she was talking about, I don't really understand it, but how many points you get for people looking at your site. And I think it was 2 for a like, and I think it was 5 or 10 for a comment, and 20 for a share on whatever this. So I've been sharing all of your stuff just so you get the 20. But I didn't know that before that.
Yeah, I think it might depend on what platform certain companies use to kind of keep track of that. But yeah, no, it's really interesting. Like with Hootsuite, you keep track of all that in analytics.
But a share was big, like
yeah,
you want people to share.
Totally, it's way more traction.
Yeah. So everybody share it.
So you get points? Is that what-
On this, when she was saying, how well your site is doing, you get certain points on this company that she was talking about. And that's how they evaluate it, like a little bit for a like, a little bit more for a comment, but big for a share.
So it's like, come on, you get a trip or a toaster.
You don't get anything, it's just how well your communications are going out.
It's the evaluation.
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Just bragging, right?
It's just bragging rights, yeah. I just thought I'd mention that I thought it was really interesting that she had brought that up, and that was important for us to share stuff.
If you get enough points, can you ask the government to forgive you?
Oh, David. We'll ask her, like, I got her email address.
I just wanted to say a big thank you to Tiana. This is her last board meeting. So, and just for all the work that she's done for us for communications
Yes,
for the
thank
last
you
year.
very
It's
much.
been wonderful, and we just really great.
Okay, action and discussion items. Dr. Zarichny, the new school building.
So we have finally some notification from Alberta Infrastructure, and the initial kickoff meeting is scheduled for July 5th. This will be just basically an opportunity for Alberta Infrastructure to introduce themselves and talk a little bit about the process. It's my understanding that the prime consultant should be selected by the end of July, and then they'll be requesting another meeting. So after July 5th, as soon as we have some information with respect to how the program, the build is going to take place and what the process looks like, we'll share that out with the board immediately. Whether or not it's going to be an Alberta Infrastructure managed project versus giving us the option to manage that project, those types of details. But it's my understanding, even though, I would much prefer to have this meeting 2 months ago, we are ahead of schedule typically for Alberta Infrastructure, where they don't do this until October. So I'm happy that we're starting earlier, but I wish it was a lot more earlier, because a lot of other questions could be answered then with respect to the project.
Any questions on that? A lot more earlier. Oh, sorry, David.
I'm sorry, I'm just bringing up Dr. Zarichny's email from the weekly board update. I had some questions. Yeah, like on 1.3, it says expectations of school board during all design phases. Do you know what that means? So this agenda items is what the province sent to you?
Yeah, just cut and paste off there,
Okay.
you know.
And thank you.
All right, fundraising initiative.
Question,
Oh,
Kathy,
sorry,
before you leave.
sorry.
Who is going to be attending this meeting on the 5th of May?
The kickoff meeting would be Chair Glasgow, myself, and Rick.
Is that a Zoom meeting? So we here, or do I just stay home?
I think it's a Teams meeting, or.
Okay, I can just stay home. Yeah, I saw that, but I didn't know if it was here or at home.
Yeah, my understanding is supposed to be a very short meeting as well. It's not a planning meeting. It's just to start the ball rolling.
Okay, is that it then? Funding initiative. Dr. Zeritsky.
So in the committee of the whole, the Newman Consulting, who was our person that we contracted to do a feasibility study, presented the board with her report. And so based on her report, we would ask that the board move to accept the report as presented. Once that's completed, then we will generate a summary to be shared publicly with the information contained with respect to that report. And then additionally, with respect to the recommendations there, the board, either through this motion or through a separate motion, would decide if it wants to engage in a fundraising campaign. And then subsequent to that subsequent to that motion or decision, then the board would have to decide in terms of the process of selecting some. So, for example, we could go to RFP and ask potential fundraisers to submit or resubmit their plan. Or given the initial process that we went, we could ask for more clarification from the other folks that did submit, and then the board could be presented with the options that we have and make a selection.
Thanks, Madam Chair. I think I'm going to ask the same question I asked during the closed meeting. And that is, what is the funds that are going to be raised? That we have asked this fundraiser to set as a target, what are they going to be used for? What sorts of things are we anticipating wanting in this construction, this new construction, that aren't going to be paid for by Alberta Infrastructure? What are those things? And I think, and further to that, the amount that the fundraiser is looking at raising is, I'm not sure on what that was based, but I think it needs to be driven by the additions that we want to make to this facility.
Sure. So with respect to the feasibility study that the fundraiser did, the fundraiser didn't do a feasibility study based on what we need. The feasibility study was based on what was the capacity to raise funds. So what's the potential that's out there? The work now, prior to starting a campaign, is to determine things like, for example, if we want to add onto the one gymnasium to make it a full-size gym, in addition to the other one that we're getting, then Alberta Infrastructure is able to tell us that it's going to be so many extra square feet and it'll cost you $500,000. So we'll be able to readily identify those areas. Another issue would be having an accessible playground so to children with disabilities. And so we can ask providers to put in a quotation in terms of how much would that equipment cost, in addition to the dollars that we know that we would be potentially receiving from Alberta Education. So we want to have the difference in. But with respect to the feasibility study, it wasn't based on need, it was based on what's our capacity to raise dollars.
And I think Rhonda mentioned that I may have been giving an answer to a question. It's how much will this market bear in terms of what we're able to fundraise? What what can we get her?
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that the Board of Trustees receive the feasibility study from Newman Consulting.
Any questions or discussion? All in favor? Pass. Okay, we'll move on to international, oh, sorry, David.
Madam Chair, I'd like to move that the Board of Trustees for the Medicine Hat Catholic Education ask administration to put out a request for proposals for a capital fundraising campaign for our new build. And I'd like to speak to it if I could.
Okay. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, so I'm a little confused in that we had a presentation giving us an amount of $4 to $5 million. And then during the committee of the whole, we had another project suggested that could be added on additionally, which was considerably more money, several $1 million. And so I'm going, we're accepting a presentation or a report, but we're also perhaps anticipating changing our request in terms of a fundraiser. And so I don't know, maybe I just need some clarification about where we're going or what the process is to get to that point.
Thanks, Madam Chair. To Bernie, I think the intent of the motion was just to accept the receipt of that report. It's not making an evaluation that we agree with it, we disagree with it, or that we're going to be doing anything with it. It's just a motion to accept it as information.
Go ahead.
Okay, Madam Chair, and I understand that. However, we're also looking at changing our anticipated campaign, which in some ways renders that report moot. So I just need some clarification on, what our process is going forward.
David, do you want to speak?
So I just a procedural thing that, that there's a motion and I think Mr. Kinch's questions would be part of the discussion of the motion. And so if I could speak to the motion.
Yes.
I wanted to put the motion out there.
This is the request for proposal.
Request for proposals for a capital fundraising campaign. In the feasibility study, there were some concerns presented. So I'm still debating in my mind, the estimated costs, once you factor in the consultant's costs plus our own costs are significant. However, there's a cost in the ability to raise $5 million. I'm also saying to myself, we don't have to accept the tenders, right? But I think it's important to find out what those costs might be to us so that, so it's information that we need. And in terms of the other project that Mr. Kinch is referring to, I think there can be more than one thing going on at the same time. So that we need to be prepared that these things, these ideas, these opportunities may come to us that we weren't anticipating. They're dreams, but we may be able to act on it. We may not. We may decide it's beyond our scope, it's beyond our means, it's beyond our capabilities. But nonetheless, I think we still need to take this step to get things going.
Anybody else? Even Robert, did you have anything?
I'm not sure if this question was asked before, but how did we come to Neufeld Consulting? How did we make that selection?
Yes, please.
So when the initial discussion, I think it was in December, maybe January, came up about looking into a professional fundraiser to do a feasibility study. I did a survey of fundraisers in Alberta as well as national ones. I emailed all of them, asking them whether they're interested in doing submitting a bid, I guess, for lack of a better word, for to do a feasibility study for us. And I had some that had no response. I had a number that replied that they weren't interested because that their agendas were full already with activities, and then we had 2 responses back. One was much earlier than the other, and significantly cheaper.
While I support the notion of an RFP for this, it sounds like we've pretty much done that already. I guess my question is, what would we do differently to attract other respondents than what we've already done?
Right. Correct me if I'm wrong, but we would put this on the APC website. So that would be the only difference there, is that, you know, the request that I sent out was only as good as what I could find. Where the APC, you have individuals that do this that are looking on there on a regular basis. So they would, you know, we might get a more robust response. Okay.
David?
I didn't put this in the motion, but I will amend it if the administration thinks they need it or it's proper. In response to the comments that Dr. Zaritsky made about how we go about this, I think this should be, I like what I'm hearing about the APC. I don't think we should just go back to these 2. I think we should just put it out there to any and all. And it may be the experience Dr. Zaritsky had, there's only 2 that come back. It may be because this is substantially larger that it piques the interest of some other firms.
So do you want to ask administration to put out a request?
For proposals.
You have that, but you want to put?
No,
the
I'm
APC in
happy
there?
hearing what I just heard.
Okay.
That it'll, as a course of regular business, it's gonna go on the APC, which stands for
Alberta Purchase Connection.
thank you.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor to ask admin to put out a request to APC. Well, I guess that one, it isn't directly in there.
Before we get to, I have one more question.
Okay.
What kind of a commitment, if any, have we made to Newman? Are they expecting a decision today, by September, or what have we given them to believe?
Our contract with the current provider was to generate a feasibility study.
And that's over now.
We're done.
When she kind of indicated that, she said whoever you go with, but. All right, any other questions or discussion on this? Okay, all in favor? Passed. All right, we'll go on to 11.3, International Education Fee Amendment.
Thank you. So there's been a request from the International Ed Program to adjust the fees for 24-25. And there's just two components to that. First is the medical insurance premiums have increased. So the proposal is to increase that fee $50 for a full year, so that'll be $550. And then for a half term, it would be an increase of $25 or $300 for the full. The second component is the activity fee. It's currently set at $500 and it's an optional fee. All the students are participating in in it, and there's been a lot of feedback that it should be a mandatory fee. So the request is to change our $500 fee from an optional fee to $500.
Would there be a piece in there you could opt out of it or not?
At this point, it would be,
Good, that's what it is.
it's $500. Now, if they don't wish to participate in an event, then they don't have to, but there's no fee.
There's no opt out. Yeah.
So the the proposed motion is, be it resolved that the Board of Trustees for the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education amend the 24-25 international education fees as presented.
Somebody like to do that motion? Okay, Dick, and any discussion on that? I read through it, and if they're all doing it anyway, I guess it's not really a big deal.
Right.
Any discussion, David? Okay, all in favor? Okay,
Madam Chair,
sorry?
I apologize. Just as a question of clarification, because of the potential size of the previous motion and the RFPs, and I think I had one of my emails the past few days, I asked for clarification on this. Will it be coming back to the board for a decision?
The short answer to that is yes, it will.
Thank you.
Okay, 11.4, 23-24 budget amendment.
Thank you. So you approved the budget not too long ago, and since that time, two items have arisen which require a budget amendment. The first is dealing with the Southland contract. So we have come to a resolution with Southland. The budget was developed with a 10% increase year over year. We were able to negotiate a 15% increase for 1 year, which is down from the 25 that they were requesting. So this would increase the division's expenditures by $72,000. Also, and this was referred to briefly in Mr. Hellman's report, with the growth at St. John Paul II School, the current allocation of a 0.5 FTE for librarian time is no longer sufficient for the school, and it's recommended to increase the school librarian allocation to a 0.86 FTE, which is really a full-time position. This would increase the division's expenditures by $17,000, so that's a total increase of $89,482 to the total expenditures, which will bring the division's deficit to $255,000 from $165,000. This can be absorbed within the existing reserve, and there's a motion that be it resolved that the Board of Trustees for the Medicine Hat Catholic Board of Education amend the 23-24 budget with a $89,482,000 increase to the expenditures.
Thanks, Greg, for that. The budget was approved with a 10% increase.
Correct.
On transportation, so the difference is 5% then.
Correct.
When Dick and I were in Calgary, right? We were at the ASBA and they had a generative discussion on transportation with all the boards there. And this is a province-wide deal. It's every board is looking at the same thing. In fact, some bus companies are asking boards to open up their contracts so that they can get that increase, which they're not doing. But it was a very valuable, I felt a very valuable discussion. What do you think?
Absolutely, it was.
And it was, you know, like we were taken aback by this 25%, but it's across the board. It's all over. David?
I'd like to commend Mr. McPherson for the excellent job he did.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I was going to say that too. Kathy and I had a discussion there, and my my hope was that we could negotiate the increase to between 15 and 18%. So coming to 15% is at the low end of what I was expecting. So, kudos to you, Greg, for this negotiation.
Thank you.
And especially after hearing what across the province is happening, it's, kudos to you is correct. Go ahead.
Madam Chair, so at that meeting you attended, was there any sort of discussion or consensus suggesting that they would petition the government?
Yes, absolutely. That's what it was about.
Okay.
The ASBA is going to do that.
And for insurance as well.
And it was for insurance and for transportation. And the insurance one was very interesting, and they went into all the different little groups, what are they called? Insurance groups that different people belong to, different group boards belong to, and that was very, very eye-opening for me to look at the insurance across Alberta, and we're actually in a very good group because we're in with some of the big boys, so we get better than a lot of other smaller school boards do because we're in with, what did you say, Calgary?
We have both of the Calgary boards, Edmonton Public, we have Rocky View, and then all the urban boards.
Yeah, so we really have the lower end of the insurance. So that was very good to hear that as well. It's really kind of neat to go to those provincial meetings, and we sit here in our little bubble, but there's stuff happening across the province, and you're doing a great job. Dick?
Well, Madam Chair, this was the first such meeting, such generative meeting that the ASB has had in advance of the board meeting. And there were a couple of things that I wanted to add. We strayed a long way from the motion, but I think we're down that rabbit hole, so we may as well continue to go.
We'll get back to it.
One of the participants in the panel has come from BC. Now, I don't remember what board he was.
Kelowna. He was with Kelowna.
With Kelowna, was it Kelowna? It's a division that is similar to, he's in Rocky View now. So the Kelowna board and Rocky View are about the same size. And Kelowna, the board in Kelowna was paying a third of the insurance that Rockyford was paying. And they're trying to figure out why. Now, as you know, BC has a different form of insurance than we have. They have public insurance. But I point out that the public insurance aspect applies only to auto insurance. That property insurance is still private. So I don't think that's the reason. They're trying to figure out why such a huge difference for comparatively similar risks. The other thing that was mentioned that was very interesting, and I understand from speaking to both Marilyn, Dennis, the ASB president, and Vivian, is that there's been discussion about the government's participation in insurance for school buildings. Because after all, who owns the school? Well, it's built with government money. We can't do anything with it unless we get government approval. I think we own the buildings, but in fact, we have very little control of the buildings over its disposition, which you would expect you'd have if you own the building. So there has been some discussion for government involvement in some form in insuring buildings. And the message is that the government ought to have a stake in ensuring what is really their asset. We're kind of like tenants here, but it's built with government money. It's repaired and maintained with government money. We get grants to fix the roof. We get grants to fix boilers. It's all government money. And the opinion by many is that government should take a more active role in ensuring that property. I guess it's been discussed at some levels. Where it's going to go is, of course, anybody's guess at this point, but I think it's a point well taken.
Okay, let's come back to the motion here. Be it resolved that the Board of Trustees for the Medicine Catholic Board of Education amend the 23-24 budget with a $89,482 increase in expenditures. Can I get somebody to pass it? Deacon Robert, all in favor? None.
Madam Chair, can I ask one question just for a point of information? So that would take our expected deficit for the next school year to what amount?
It would move it from 165 to 255.
255, okay, thank you.
All right, committee reports. ATA negotiations, Mr. Mesno.
There is nothing to report. The next round of bargaining, as I mentioned at the last meeting, will likely happen in September.
Okay, thank you. QP. Deacon Robert?
One of the reports in the package, if you have any questions, you can direct them towards Greg. We basically met on the 15th and kind of had an introductory meeting with the QP negotiating team. So it was a good meeting. And Janet Money, our ATA negotiator, is taking the lead. It was a good meeting.
Teacher Board Advisory, Mr. Kinch.
No reports.
Support Staff Board Advisory, Deacon Robert.
So I forget the date, sorry. What was the date? Did we meet with them? What was it, about 2 weeks ago? Yeah, so basically our staff board advisory, we're kind of rebuilding. We're not getting a lot of interest in our support staff attending the meetings. Or the ladies chairing the meeting and the secretary, they're stepping down. Nick was able to have them to agree to attend our first meeting in the fall. So we're kind of in a rebuilding phase for that committee. We talked about some of those items within our meeting. One of the things that I spoke with Nick and Chuck about, and maybe I think it should be a board decision anyway, to incentivize support staff attending. What we were thinking about was every school would have a delegated person that would represent that school. And then if they attend the meeting, that we could give them time off in lieu in order to attend the meeting. And which would, I think, would help rebuild this committee, because nothing's been really happening. All the items they bring are monetary generally, which is why we came up with that subcommittee. But we really need to rebuild this. And we used to do PD in these meetings. We don't do that anymore. So maybe do you guys have any comments?
Yeah, I think the intent was that we were going to move to that model where we encourage one member from each staff to come and be part of that committee, so we could gain more insight what's happening in each building and what the concerns are throughout the entire division. And then again, the suggestion was to look at how can we incentivize that participation, whether that's time in lieu or if that's a day in lieu for your participation in that committee.
Or just advise caution that teacher board advisory might want these also.
So we'll just leave that till the fall, probably, till the board meeting. Okay, 12.5, QP Support Staff Advisory. David?
attached, and all the thanks go to Mr. McPherson.
Student Board Advisory, nothing to report. Audit Committee, nothing to report. Division Consolidation Planning Committee, Dr. Zertsky.
No report.
Alberta School Boards Association, Mr. Mustel.
Thank you, Madam Chair. We've had 2 meetings since we met last. The first was on May 17th. Just 4 things that I'd like to highlight. The president, Marilyn, and Vivian attended the Canadian School Boards Association meeting in Montreal. The second is that there was a discussion at the zone regarding modular units and the availability of modular units across the province. Apparently, according to Alberta Infrastructure, they are quote up to date on requests. There are boards in our zone which take opposition to that, and apparently there is a listing of quote surplus units which are needed elsewhere. The third item is the training for trustees, which just concluded the day before the ASB started, and certificates were given out to probably 30 people. And the only non-female receiving award was Brad Toon, the former director in our zone to the ASBA. They were all women. And the last thing that was mentioned was that there's a presentation group that do a presentation on Indigenous studies having to do with Truth and Reconciliation. I really don't have many details, but apparently this group is based in Strathmore. I had a dinner on Monday night at the ASBA with the guys from 76, and they gave me to believe that they had this presentation already in their division, and it is extremely, extremely valuable. The cost is roughly $3,000 to $4,000. I was going to call Harry, one of the trustees from Christ the Redeemer, but I haven't done that yet to get some more information with the idea that we may be able to use this on one of our PD days at some point in the future. So I will commit to the board that by the September meeting, I will have more information about what this event is and why it would be valuable to us. The second meeting was held last Wednesday, and just a couple of things there that I want to mention there. Apparently, the new minister, who was Demetrius Nicolaitis, am I saying that right? Has reached out to the ASBA and asked them for a meeting. That happened a week ago, Monday, and he said, "Can you meet on Tuesday?" So last week, Tuesday, the ASBA executive, Marilyn and Viv, and I believe Shelley, was there to attend. The meeting was very interesting. They said they made the same kinds of presentation as they've made to the past minister, dealing with availability of subs, the difficulty of getting drivers, funding, and all of the big ticket kind of items. There have been meetings with the fraternal organizations of the ASBA, and that includes the ACSTA, the PSBAA, and the Francophones. As you may remember, the Zone 7 position has been eliminated. Now, that was a visitor status from us and from the other organizations to sit in as observers at the ASBA board meeting. That has been eliminated. In its place is this fraternal organization. They have terms of reference. They will meet regularly, and the advantage of this is they will have some input, although it being indirectly, to the ASBA, which in the past, there was no chance for input at all. You were there strictly as an observer. Now you have a chance to communicate with the executive and the other members of the Francophone, our organization, and also the public school board organization. Terms of reference have been written, and the chairmanship of this will rotate, so that at each meeting there will be a different partner leading the discussion. And that's all I have to report. Shally is the vice president's name, not Shally, Shally.
Shall
I have it written down, I didn't see it there.
Okay, thanks, Dick. ACSTA, I have a report there attached, and their executive also met with Minister Ray. Medicine Hat Catholic School Education Foundation, Mr. Kinch.
Thank you, Chair. So the golf tournament has just finished, and it was quite a success. Good weather, wonderful day, 69 golfers. The profit was made of approximately $7,500 for the tournament after all expenses are paid. I would like to take this opportunity on behalf of the board and the Ed Foundation to thank Mackenzie Ellingson for all her hard work. It would not have happened but for her, and also for her arranging all of the volunteers who committed to work all day long. And she had said that the golf course was very pleased with them, especially because they were out by 10 after 7 that night. So it was a good thing, and we met yesterday morning for 2 hours and amended our bylaws to meet government standards for what they're wanting for fundraising, and to go over the golf tournament, talk about it. So things are progressing, and we shouldn't meet again until September.
Okay, good, thank you. Parent Association, I have the May minutes are attached there. Thank you, Chelsea. And I always send them to her because I'm sure what to do with them. But again, it's running smoothly. It's just a great organization. Teacher employee, TIBA, Mr. Mestel.
There has not been a meeting since we met last.
Okay.
There was notice just received, I think yesterday, that the next meeting will be on June 29th. And I had messaged that Greg will be able to attend that meeting. So that's all that's happening.
And spiritual leadership scholarship, Mr. Leahy.
You know, Madam Chair, I've asked this before, it's not a big deal, but I've been on this for 6 years, and I've never been asked to go to a meeting.
Yeah.
So I think McCoy kind of does this themselves,
Okay.
which I'm not complaining about. I'm just saying I don't really think that needs to be part of the agenda.
Okay.
Madam Chair, do we need to delete that standing committee, or as a standing committee? Is that the recommendation?
Sorry, yes, Mr. Mestel, if I were to make it a proper recommendation, because I do think it's listed in the policy, yes, so it should go through that process.
Yeah. Okay, we can take that through the process.
Go ahead.
Maybe Monsignor McCoy should be inviting you to their meetings.
Maybe. I've only had one phone call in the 6 years. It was a parent concerned about why their son didn't get this award. So sorry, there was also another time when someone was concerned that the award wasn't.
So maybe we can check with McCoy and see, did you want to do that, Heather? Sure. Just check with McCoy and see what they think, and then we can do a recommendation in September to either have it or don't have it.
Thank you, Robert.
Okay, closing prayers, St. Mary's closing prayer. Oh,
That was very good, Heather, for you to set that all up.
yeah.
Oh, it was my joy.
Okay, so now we gotta go back to the committee of the whole.
And good night.